You seem to be obsessed with race and sexuality. I mean, you even go so far as to say that when race and sexuality and diversity and inclusion are at issue, we need a separate standard of proof in the United States federal judiciary. How are litigants going to be able to trust you?
Mustafa Taher, Biden's nominee for district court judge in Oregon, is grilled by Senator Kennedy. I'm Rob on the right. Let's go take a look.
Do you require the use of pronouns, the declaration of one's pronouns in your court?
It's an invitation for people to identify their pronouns and or their honorifics.
Well, I'm looking at in your directive, you say, quote, I'd like counsel to introduce themselves giving your full name and your honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr., not Mrs. And if your client will be making an appearance, I ask you to please introduce them to the court by giving me their full name and their honorific, such as Ms., MS period, Mix, or Mr. End quote. Is that right?
Senator, those were not requirements or rules. Those were suggestions and
That was suggestions.
Those were suggestions and invitations for people to use.
At this point, it might be worth pointing out how much influence a judge has over the jury and the court proceedings in general. It's fair to say that unless otherwise noted, litigants will assume that these are instructions and not just merely suggestions.
We have to set aside conventional ideas of proof.
What you talking about, Willis?
Let me say that again. We have to set aside conventional ideas of proof, you said, when we are dealing with the personal and interpersonal work of equity, division, and inclusion. As a judge, I can appreciate the challenge of employing a different mode for understanding truth than that which most lawyers are accustomed to in our work, end quote. Did you write that?
That is a quote from that article.
You gotta love how these slime balls try to worm their way out of owning up to something they've written. I mean, but let's be clear. This guy turned these things in for this proceeding. I mean, seriously, look at that face. That's the face of, I really wish I hadn't turned in those documents.
So when we're dealing with equity, diversity, and inclusion, we should set aside conventional ideas of proof. Is that right?
In the larger context of interpersonal and personal relationships, the idea of being able to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, but you didn't talk about a conversation. You said proof.
It's in the context of having a conversation with somebody about the issue of their background and their experience.
So when the issue is equity, diversity, or inclusion, we should have a different set of proof. Is that right?
When it comes to the
That you do.
So all issues have one set of proof, which has been handed down by our state Supreme Courts, our U.S. Supreme Court, except you think we ought to have a different set of proof when equity, diversity, and inclusion are at issue. Is that right?
In all of my years on the bench, Senator, I have applied the law, the rules of evidence, the case precedent.
You could do so.
Let me move on.
Sorry, pal. Word salads don't fly here. Senator Kennedy continues his onslaught by quoting the stupid things this guy says.
You wrote, quote, white, male, straight people allow privilege to remain in place, close quote. Did you say that? Did you write that?
Without looking at the specific speech
here. You turned it in.
Well, if that's on the piece of paper, Senator, then I have no reason to disagree.
You also wrote, quote, privilege is incredibly similar to narcissistic personality disorder, close quote. Did you write that?
Without looking at everything in the context of that statement, it appears correct.
Okay.
Why can't this guy just own up to the things he said and written? I'll tell you why, because when they're read back to him, they sound like complete garbage. But I want to know what you guys think. Should this guy be appointed as a district judge? Let me know in the comments below. Regardless, the grilling continues from one of our favorite senators.
You also wrote, quote, I am disappointed about the way in which the founding fathers of this country perpetuated inequity, close quote. Did you write that?
In the context of the issue of slavery, that was something that I'd been considering.
In your notes you gave us from a speech on May 17, 2023, does race matter? You said, quote, does race matter? Hell yes, close quote. You know that T-shirt at the Saturday markets, the one that says something like love, see no color, and it has all the colors of the rainbow all over it, and it's like a tie-dye shirt. Well, the first time I saw it, I said, Ah, how sweet. Then I got angry. If love doesn't see color, then I don't have allies. Close quote. Did you say that?
Yes, and that was to explain that the work of equity is to help understand where people are coming from, not to ignore who they are.
That has got to be the screwiest logic ever. Seriously, the shirt describes equity by saying everybody is equal. But this guy can't stand the fact that his minority is lost among the voices of all the people in the spectrum. That in itself is the definition of being equal.
Judge, you seem to be obsessed with race and sexuality. I mean, you even go so far as to say that when race and sexuality and diversity and inclusion are at issue, we need a separate standard of proof in the United States federal judiciary. How are litigants going to be able to trust you?
Senator, that's not what I've said. There is
Sure
no
it is.
different
Here it is,
standard.
bigger than Dallas. I read it to you.
When you look
turned in these documents. I didn't go looking for them.
When you
Seem
look at,
proud of it.
Senator
I just don't see how you can be a fair-minded judge.
Yeah, I don't think Mustafa's going to go too far after a lambasting like that. But then again, the Democrats seem to be running the Department of Justice. Either way, it doesn't really matter because every time they pull a trick, it seems to backfire on them. For instance, take Alvin Bragg over here. He did Trump a total solid. Check out this video. Trump's numbers went up after the guilty verdict came in. Seriously, check it out. And if not, see you around the campus.